As a big tent organization, SPOA supports the rights of all property owners, including the small mom and pop businesses that provide 65% of the rental housing in Boston and throughout Massachusetts. The majority of small property owners have multiple properties and any number of apartments as they conduct their management duties on their own or with a relatively small group of people. What makes these owners small is the size, the reach, and the complexity of their business structures, as opposed to the number of units they own, which sets them apart from the giant mega organizations like BlackRock Vanguard and Avalon Bay, which have many offices loaded with many different personnel in multiple states and multiple countries throughout the world. When it comes to the diverse pool of small owners, we also have lower income people who reside in their rental properties who need more help managing the challenges that come their way. In this episode, we'll hear from a group that supports this subsection within our community. It's our pleasure to introduce the dedicated people from the Volunteer Lawyers Project. Hello, everyone. My name is Amir Shahsavari. I'm the Vice President of the Small Property Owners Association, also known as SPOA, which brings you episode 16 of SPOA Housing Policy Series. This is where we discuss property rights, housing policy, and all things real estate. I'm happy to welcome attorneys Kevin Walsh and Sarah Mullis, as well as Paralegal Amana Hill of the Volunteer Lawyers Project. Thanks to all of you for joining us today.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to remind you kindly to donate to SPOA at spoa.com/join. That's www.spoa.com/join. As a group of volunteers, we work very hard to bring you monthly newsletters. We work hard to bring you this program. We bring you email updates about pending legislation relevant to property owners and tenants. We testify on your behalf at government hearings. We also spend time connecting with elected officials on your behalf outside of those hearings. And we can't do it without your help. I mean, in addition to all that, as you know, we've had articles published in the media. In the past, we have also given interviews with the print and TV media. We hope to continue doing that going forward, but we do need your support and your participation. So if you could please donate at spoa.com/join, we would certainly appreciate that. And now I will turn it over to Kevin first. And the first question is, could you kindly tell us more about the Volunteer Lawyers Project, who you help, and what you do?
Sure, thank you. The Volunteer Lawyer Project of the Boston Bar Association has been dedicated to serving low-income families and individuals in the greater Boston area since 1977. The VLP, Volunteer Lawyer Project, strives to give equal access to justice to our clients by delivering high-quality pro bono, meaning free, legal services to eligible clients through our court clinics, lawyer for the day programs, and by referring cases sometimes to attorneys for full representation. The Volunteer Lawyer Project's efforts are propelled by a strong team of volunteers, including licensed attorneys, law students, and others who are generous enough to volunteer their time from the various segments of the legal community. These vital volunteers work together with the VLP's entire dedicated staff. The VLP accepts, should anyone be interested, licensed mass attorneys, law graduates, and law students as volunteers. The Volunteer Lawyer Project assists low-income people across several areas of law. And just a few years ago, the VLP added to its programs the program we're talking about, which is a program to assist low-income landlords.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Kevin, would you like to describe the mission of the VLP?
The VLP's mission is to increase access to justice by delivering high-quality pro bono civil legal services to eligible clients. The VLP's small landlord program, which is what we are here to talk about today more specifically, began in 2020 during the COVID, when the VLP received a grant and began delivering a first of its kind landlord advocacy project in order to empower and support small landlords in need. Now, today, there are 3 separately funded programs which the Volunteer Lawyers Project runs to help eligible small landlords in both Boston and the Worcester County area.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, how does the small landlord program operate?
The small landlord program, we currently operate off of about 3 grants right now. And we do that in order to be able to really provide our small landlords with sort of that legal aid that oftentimes they may get left out of. We primarily work in sort of 2 sections. We have our Boston program, which is made, possible by Boston OHS. And we have our Worcester program, which is made possible through the Massachusetts Bar Foundation and MLAC. And so through these 2 programs, we really field a lot of our clients through these court clinics that I believe Kevin also mentioned, and we could definitely go into more detail with.
Sure, yes, yes, I'm eager, and I'm sure our audience is eager to hear about these 2 clinics.
Yes, so we do have 2 clinics. On Tuesdays, we are in the Boston Housing Court. So Easton Housing Court on New Chardon Street, the Edward Brook, 3rd floor, from 8:45 a.m. to 2 p.m. We're right outside of the the housing court's clerk's office. And we just have a table, and we essentially are open to business for anybody who wants to come and see if they are eligible. So we do have an intake process, but once an individual gets through the intake process, we provide general counsel and advice to those who financially qualify. And our assistance usually in that clinic is limited to day of assistance. And in our Worcester program, we do have sort of 2 other programs that we're sort of working with in tandem. So same situation in terms of we have a table, or actually we have a whole room in Worcester. So we're in room 7A, to the left of the clerk's office desk. And we accept walk-ins, and so people are welcome to come to us, and we sort of figure out whether they are eligible for either our sort of short-term day of assistance or our long-term full rep assistance, which the latter Attorney Mullis heads and the prior Attorney Walsh heads. So these clinics are pretty much open to anyone. Just we do a qualification thing to make sure that we are only helping those who fit within our eligibility requirements. But for the most part, a lot of people are able to walk away with, something valuable. So just sometimes it's just a matter of helping people get started with, whatever their legal matter is.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit more about the funding sources for each clinic and who specifically each clinic helps?
Sure, Amir. We have 3 current funded programs. The program we have in Boston to help certain small landlords is from the city of Boston via the city's Office of Housing Stability. And the city's goal is to try to find and maintain stable, safe, and affordable housing in Boston. And we try to help with that goal through assisting on the small landlord side of residential housing issues. Just in case, if anyone wanted to reach the city's OHS department, you could call 617 635 4200. Then we have a second grant program, which allows us to serve small landlords in Worcester County. And that grant is from the Mass Bar Foundation. And the Mass Bar Foundation seeks to promote justice and to ensure equal access to the legal system for residents of Massachusetts. So once again, we can help some small landlords in Central Mass through that program. And then Sarah could tell us about a third program that's fairly new.
Yes, so the program that I work on is called Access to Counsel Project. And this is a state-funded grant. Um, and it allows me to take on full representation of clients. So I can, if I see you at the beginning of the process, I can draft a notice to quit for you. I can file an eviction, a summary process complaint. I can go with you to hearings, or in the eventual case, if we needed to go to trial, I could represent you at trial. So this program is, I believe, the only program in its like in the state. And we also help small landlords, owner occupied, and there are income eligibility limits.
In
Thank you.
fact, that's true for all three of these programs. There are some income and other eligibility issues that apply.
Is it correct that you would have to be an owner occupant as well as someone whose income is at a beneath a certain threshold?
For my program, that is correct. You have to be owner occupied, meaning you live in the same place where you're renting out some of the other units.
I see. Thank you very much. And could you please also describe some of the common problems that you help small property owners with within these different programs?
Well, we try to do as much as we can with what we have available. Um, the typical problems we see, one of them, a standard problem, is a notice to quit defect. Many small landlords try to do things on their own, at least to start, and they end up getting form notices to quit from all over the place. And many times those notices just aren't quite good enough. So when we see them at the court clinic, we have to try to help them. And sometimes the help is telling them they have to start over. But there are various issues that we typically see and look for um, in certain non-payment cases. For example, sometimes landlords are failing to use the state attestation form, which is required, in which you'd have to sign a certificate about when you file in court. If you're in the city of Boston, you also need to serve with the notice to quit a resources and information sheet for tenants. Some landlords aren't aware of that. Sometimes landlords in a notice to quit give improper notice periods. So you have to be careful there. Sometimes the notice is correct, but maybe the service of process might, or service of the notice to quit before that, that might not be proper. So all of these things have to be looked at together to try to make sure that we get the small landlords on a solid base, a solid footing, so that their case can continue from there on more substantive grounds and not get bogged down or possibly thrown out of court by procedural grounds. So we try to help with those kinds of things. And sometimes we will draft notice to quit. We will give information about what to look for in mediation, various things like that we tend to do at our court clinics.
Another problem that we see a lot at our clinics is violations of the security deposit law. In Massachusetts, there's a very strict, very onerous security deposit law. And just some of the issues that we see is the landlord not putting the security deposit, for example, in the correct bank account. Under the law, the landlord must deposit the security deposit in a separate interest-bearing account in a Massachusetts bank under the name of the tenants. This is so that the security deposit is out of reach of the landlord's creditors. Some other requirements include giving the tenant a receipt for that security deposit, showing uh, the amount that was deposited, the account number, and the bank information, such as the address for the bank. Some other things is giving the tenant a written statement of conditions in the apartment when you give them the receipt for the security deposit. Um, Finally, the landlord must pay interest on the security deposit to the tenant every year. And then at the end of the tenancy, the landlord must return the deposit less any damages or unpaid rent within 30 days. And the list must include, or sorry, the return of the security deposit, if there are any damages or unpaid rent, there should be an itemized list with estimates or receipts attached as evidence for the cost of repair. Those are very important because if you end up in court, some of the um, remedies for violating the statute include 3 times the amount of the security deposit plus the interest and court costs and reasonable attorney's fees. So it's very important to pay attention to the rules of the statute because it can be extremely costly if you make a mistake. For small landlords, some attorneys even advise that their client don't take a security deposit. And if they are concerned about potential damages, they could price that into the cost of rent. And when it comes to last month's rent, the rules are a little bit more relaxed. So there's no special type of account to put the last month's rent in. It can be under the landlord's name, but you do have to pay interest on the last month's rent every year.
Thank you. And what about health code issues?
Well, Amir, that's an area that can sometimes really plague small landlords. It can be very expensive to repair and maintain property, especially older property. But small landlords have to realize that once they become property owners who are renting property, they have a lot of obligations regarding upkeep of the property that they are renting. And many of those obligations are outlined in the state sanitary code. That code is a pretty lengthy list of requirements that a residential property has to meet in order to be in compliance. And it covers all kinds of things in the apartment, not just big issues like walls and windows, but it covers lots of different things. So anyone renting property should be aware, at least generally, of the state sanitary code and its requirements, just so that you're generally aware of the kinds of things you have to be careful to maintain. One problem that often affects small landlords is when a tenant damages the property themselves. Some more inexperienced small landlords sometimes say, well, why do I have to fix that? I didn't cause it. The tenant did. The law is that you still have to fix it if you're the small landlord or any landlord. You can certainly then maybe use the damage as a later reason for an eviction. But if there is any defect in the property, you as the owner are responsible for resolving it. And then for small landlords too, many don't realize that certain communities, including larger cities, and Boston is one of them, have city ordinances. These are laws that apply to activities just within the city boundaries, but they also add another layer of responsibility for small landlords to review and follow. And sometimes like in Boston, there are some inspection requirements. I know either Cambridge or Somerville, my last memory was they had certain other requirements in their ordinances. So always be aware that you really have to do your homework when you are a landlord, and it can be a complicated process. And so having a lawyer is usually very good advice from the beginning so that you don't start going down the wrong path. And in that same vein, another group of issues that we sometimes see landlords having problems with are leases. Again, you can get a lease online, all kinds of places. Some leases are good and some just aren't. And some of the leases can have terms that violate the law, terms that are ill-advised. And then certain leases, for example, if a landlord is involved in HUD Section 8 rent subsidies or other government rent subsidy programs, those programs frequently impose additional rules and regulations on various issues, including eviction rules. So people who have tenants getting those kinds of subsidies need to make sure that they're following all of the rules that apply to them.
Thank you, Kevin. Sarah?
Another issue that we see is sometimes we see emergency situations. Um, some people don't know that the housing court actually has the power, in addition to having the power to evict people and award monetary damages. They also have the power of injunctions, which means that the court can tell someone to stop doing something or telling them to do something. An injunction is usually used on an emergency basis. Some of those issues could be access to the unit. If your tenant has changed the locks or is refusing access to make repairs, the landlord could get an injunction stating that the tenant has to allow access to the unit after reasonable notice. Um, Another thing you could use the injunctive relief process for would be controlling nuisances. This could be something like excessive noise or smoking in common areas, or it could be something more serious like drug activity in the unit, or if the tenant is threatening other people. Um, and then finally, if there's any issues relating to disabilities like hoarding or sanitation issues, if your tenant is causing conditions on the property that would violate the state sanitary code, you could get injunctive relief to order the tenant to stop or order them to clean up the unsanitary conditions. After filing a complaint for injunctive relief, you will usually get a hearing within a couple of weeks. But importantly, I should mention that as a part of an injunctive relief claim, you cannot get the court to order that tenant to leave. You have to use the normal eviction process to get them to leave.
Thank you, Sarah. And before moving on, just for clarification, if you have a property owner who does not speak English as a first language, do you have interpreters who can help them out?
Yes, we do. We have at VLP, we have a panel of interpreters. So if, for example, I was taking on a client who did not speak English, I would have an interpreter assigned to the client and would use the interpreter to communicate with the client.
That's good to know. Thank you.
And
So,
Amir, just another point, the court, as many people know, also has an interpreter program, but a lot of small landlords don't necessarily know that. And if a landlord, or if you know your tenant speaks a foreign language as their first language, you can call the court ahead of time to let them know there is a need for help interpreting in a certain language, and the court will arrange to have an interpreter. You don't want to go to court and try to muddle through it when you're dealing with a language that's not your first language, but also the legal language, which can be complicated even to native English speakers. So don't suffer in silence. If you need help, there is help available. Please ask for it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, these questions come about from time to time because the impression is that tenants usually have access to resources like that, but there's very little outreach to property owners for the same resources. So that's valuable advice. Thank you, Kevin. Amana, if people want to reach out to you, how can they get in touch?
One way is if you have a legal problem, you're a landlord, you are able to call our intake line. Our intake line is through an organization called Early. So you can call our intake line and it's 617-603-1700. And they'll just field your call and then send you to us. Another good way, and I think this is probably an even better way to get in touch with us if you need immediate help, is to come to one of our clinics in person. So I mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again because I think it's so important. But in Boston, we're in the Eastern Housing Court, right out front of the clerk's office on the third floor. Every Tuesday from 8:45 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then in Worcester, we're in Worcester every Thursday at the Central Housing Court in the Worcester courthouse from 8:45 a.m. to 2 p.m. So same times, different days. And Worcester's on the second floor. Again, we're to the left of the clerk's office in Worcester, but you're always, if you aren't able to find us, just ask the clerk's office and they will point you right to us. But I would say it's definitely really good to come to us in person. But also if somebody is just looking to get more information on us and what we do have a website. It's vlpnet.org/landlord/. And that will sort of just give you more information about our advocacy unit and the type of work that we do, as well as it just has a valuable like master list of just information for landlords. So if you're a landlord, I would definitely bookmark that website.
Yes,
Certainly.
and just to add to what Amana said, there are actually informational videos on our website under the Landlord Advocacy Program tab that are really helpful and informative too.
That's wonderful to know, indeed. And what we're going to do on our end, we will encourage our members to find those resources and to come see you folks in person. This was a very valuable and informative introduction. I want to thank the three of you for joining us today, and I hope that you'll come back again to have more discussions about the valuable work that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks again for having us.
Thank you, Amir.